Dum da da dum da dum dum. If you're new to this channel, I'm trying to coin a new phrase, a crookshank, after Hermione's cat, Crookshanks. A crookshank is a character, scene, sequence, moment, item, etc. that adaptations include because they know fans of the source material will be upset if it's missing, but the reason it existed in the first place has been removed. If you're not sure what I mean, I am about to hit you with so many examples. The opening scene is built in a way to build tension because it lists a number of things that are brought up repeatedly throughout the book so that you're always wary of what's going on. Voldemort had something to do with Bertha Jorkin's disappearance. The fact that we know this builds the frustration of no one knowing what happened to her and hoping that someone will so that Voldemort can be thwarted. We also learn that something is going to happen at Hogwarts this year, and Voldemort plans to use that event somehow, which gives us an ominous feeling as other people start hinting that something is happening at Hogwarts. Once Harry is selected, we start to wonder what Voldemort is up to. Is this what he wanted? Does he want Harry to win, lose, or die? Just lots of uncertainty and tension. It's also the second time that Harry has a dream of seeing what Voldemort sees. The first is actually in book 1. Comment below if you've noticed it. Well, movie, Bertha is never mentioned. The fact that Voldemort knows about the Triwizard Tournament isn't mentioned. Voldemort killing his father is never mentioned. And they treat this like a dream rather than a vision, so there is no point to this scene other than the filmmakers assumed that fans would be upset if the movie didn't start with this segment. The Quidditch World Cup might be the worst crookshank in the entire series, partially because it's not technically included. They skip right over it. But for the entire World Cup segment in the book, this is what we learn and what happens. We learn about Portkeys. We learn that there are other magic schools. We meet Ludo Bagman. We meet Barty Crouch and actually learn about his personality beyond octopus fingers. We meet Crumb and we learn a little bit about his personality. We establish Ron's resentment over Harry's money. We learn about Vila and their magical influence on men, which comes up later with Fleur. Side note, can we stop the fantasy trope of siren-like characters / creatures enamoring men and the women around them seeing it happen and either getting offended or acting like, oh my gosh, men are so stupid. They're under a literal spell, and the women know that. It's so annoying. Back to the criticism. We learn about the Dark Mark. This is also when BJ escapes. That's hinted at by how Crouch freaks out at his house elf, Winky. And all of that happens at the World Cup. The movie shows us Crumb, Portkeys, and the Dark Mark. That is it. But fans would want the World Cup, so they gave it to us. Kind of. I personally was guilty of wanting to see Rita Skeeter on screen. I was excited to see her brought to life. While there is no purpose to her, and she should have been cut. The book version writes articles that drive a wider wedge between Harry and Ron, outs Hagrid as a half-giant, makes the other champions dislike Harry, gets him teased, gets people to dislike Hermione because they think she's a femme fatale after Harry for his fame, is able to turn into a bug, is captured and blackmailed by Hermione, and in book 5 writes the article about Harry's fight in the graveyard, which helps spread the truth in the alternative press. Movie Rita Skeeter exists, and that's all that I can say about her. It makes it extra frustrating because the actress is amazing in the role, and I'd love to see more of her. The casting in these movies was so good apart from the glaring presence of Michael Gambon. And Barty Crouch, I've only recently realized. Hagrid and Maxine's romance in the book leads to Hagrid revealing his giantness. They fight and he helps her reveal her giantness, and they stay an item and they try and bring the giants over to Dumbledore's side together. In the movie, it's just comic relief. The faux glass is a weird one because it's just a reference that goes nowhere. We never see it work, and it's a waste of time, really. And it's especially odd because it's involved in a moment that most directors would love to film. As Moody is threatening Harry at the end, the images in the faux glass start to become more and more clear, and then suddenly Harry can see Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape are fully visible in it right before they blast the door open. That could, without much effort, be a really cool shot. Why wasn't it there? And again, who are these old people? Barty Crouch could have been almost entirely removed from this movie. I know, that one's surprising. Book Crouch, in chronological order, sends his son to Azkaban because, wow, he should have. Then, less than a year later, he breaks BJ out of prison at his wife's insistence, but keeps him imperious in the house for years. Later, he allows him to go to the Quidditch World Cup for good behavior. He fires Winky when his son almost gets away, finds him unconscious, and brings him home. Then he has his home invaded by Voldemort, who sets BJ free to be Mad-Eye Moody and imperiouses him so he can pretend to be at home ill and doing all of his work via correspondence with Percy Weasley. He fights off the curse and gets out of the house. He makes his way to Hogwarts to warn Dumbledore, but his mind is a little fried and he's killed by BJ before he can. BJ then transmogrifies him into a bone and buries him in Hagrid's garden. Movie Crouch sends his son to Azkaban, announces the age restriction at the beginning of the tournament, holds the bag while the champions draw the dragons, has a short and pointless conversation with Harry, and then dies in the woods. That's it. And his death has no actual impact on the plot. So replace him with Fumbledore for the other Triwizard stuff, cut his murder, and show him sentencing BJ to Azkaban. You could have had him in the flashback and that's it. The fact that cutting him out removes less than a minute of screen time is really telling. Of course, cutting him out of the courtroom scene would be an option because the Pensieve is a Crookshank too. This movie sucks so hard. What do we learn in that scene? We learn that Karkaroff was a Death Eater. Sirius already told us that. We learned that Mr. Crouch's son is a Death Eater and does a weird tongue thing. The tongue thing is stupid, and since we already knew that BJ was working for Voldy, and the fact that he's Crouch's son makes no difference, this scene serves no purpose other than spoiling Snape's story. The whole movie is an absolute mess. I made a quick edit where I removed everything I said could be cut, and it brought this down from a 2 hour and 37 minute movie to a 2 hour and 2 minute movie, which is infuriating, not because it was there, but because it was there at the expense of things that could have helped make the story make sense, or at least slow down the remaining scenes enough for them to carry any emotional weight whatsoever. So, what is the solution here? Was this movie just doomed to fail? It is based on a massive book. How could you possibly convert this sucker to a movie? It would be so much better as a season of a TV show. Maybe animated. #animate Potter. But you have to convert this 190,000 word book to a 150 page script. What do? Well, you run the risk of ticking off a lot of fans, but your first goal should be make a cohesive movie. First, they need to take a look at the main point of this movie. Voldemort comes back. Okay, that scene has to happen. Aftermath/closing is Cedric's funeral, so we can have a call for unity in the face of the dark times ahead. Alright, strong start. How does Voldemort come back? Via luring Harry to the graveyard via the Triwizard Tournament. So, we include the tournament. Now we factor in the prep for the tournament. Okay, big plot, the mystery of how Harry was entered and why. So, now we add all of that stuff. At this point, we start checking the length of our script, and I think that that is how adaptations should work. Most look at the story as it is and start thinking about what can be cut, rather than working backwards from the smallest point possible and adding as you need to and can. And it can especially work if you make sure that each one of those drafts, before you add more to it, has functional character development and makes sense. Because then you can add more without taking away from the characters, and even add more to the characters with each one of those scenes, and make the story stay coherent. Okay, that's all I've got. Just a measly 21-page rant. My Azkaban video, I said my only desire was to illustrate why some people don't like that movie. But this time I hate it. I really do, and now you know why, and I truly hope it makes you hate it too. You'll see me next time if you subscribe. Bye.